I wanted to talk about Andor because I had like a very sort of, I've just finished watching the first couple of episodes, little chat about it right after right after it came out. And the first 3 episodes were out, and I really, really enjoyed them, but also we hadn't really dug too deep into it, and not too much had really happened in the show. But the first season of it is now wrapped up. It's 12 episodes long, and it is, without question, in my opinion, the best Star Wars related show and the best Disney Plus original show that has been produced thus far, Mark. That is how good Andor was.
I have seen very similar takes on my timelines and different think pieces from a bunch of different publications that have said pretty much that same thing as well.
It is just brilliant. So the main story is Cassian Andor comes from a small community. He starts off the movie looking for his long lost sister and gets into a bit of trouble in a bar on a planet, ends up falling afoul of some soldiers from the Empire, and through no real specific deliberate action ends up killing them, and that starts off a bit of a manhunt for him, basically. So he basically spends the first kind of few episodes trying to evade the long arm of the Empire, but then the show goes from that angle and just morphs into so many different things, because it feels like the story they're telling is kind of separated into 2 separate pods. Like the first 6 episodes have quite an epic climactic finish, where there's, a bit of a heist style situation, after you could even break it down into 3s, right? Because you've got the setup for the first 3 episodes, and then he finds himself in like a, assembling the crew ragtag bunch of characters on a random planet, and they're planning this heist, which they, happens. So you can see, I'm not going to spoil it too much, whether it's successful or not, but is incredibly well executed, and the tension of it and stuff is built extremely well, and then immediately falls into a horrible situation where he spends 3 episodes isolated in this just horrific prison work camp situation, which feels like the sort of boldest, most isolationist sci-fi type scenario that you could end up in. Everything is pure white and like radiant light and thoroughly miserable, and the show goes from what feels like a place-to-place freewheeling rebellion type show into this like incredibly enclosed, claustrophobic, prison style sci-fi Stark scenario, which obviously he needs to find himself out of, and that leads to one of the best jailbreak style things I think I've ever seen executed in any media. It was fantastic, and Star Wars has had some pretty incredible jailbreak, we need to get to a place, do a thing, and then escape in time things across the films and the TV shows that we've seen so far. But this is like up there with the very best stuff that they've ever done. Like, I'm talking going back to like 77, 80, 83 Star Wars original trilogy. This is on that level in terms of how well executed it is. And by the way, I have to give a shout out to Andy Serkis, who, believe it or not, is a fucking incredible actor. Like, he spent all those years doing all of the cool and weird mocap stuff, and he was always like the go-to, if we're going to get someone to act as like a weird beast or an animal or something, but in a humanoid form, anthropomorphic in some way, let's just get Serkis to do it. And he smashed it in Apes, and obviously he smashed it as Gollum / Smeagol in Lord of the Rings. But here, he's just kind of like a browbeaten supervisor of a team in a prison, and his character transformation takes place over the course of like just 3 episodes of content, and it feels more emotionally resonant than anything they did in that whole Obi-Wan show. And I quite enjoyed the Obi-Wan show for what it was, but it's just the writing is so much better, and the pacing of it feels like where they've had 12 episodes to play with, and the episodes are like 40-45 minutes long, it just feels like they can gradually build things into a cadence like so much better. And extra time doesn't always necessarily equate to, okay, well, we've got all of this time, let's gradually do it and blah blah blah, because sometimes people just waste time on needless setup and bury you and drown you in like loads of expositional dialogue to explain why you're in a situation that you are. But this show doesn't do that at all. It spends so much time framing things, so much time showing you scenarios and putting characters in them and going from different points of view to just give you a real feel of the universe and the dangers that a lot of the characters are in, because the three main characters essentially are Cassian Andor, obviously, who we saw in Rogue One. This is a prequel to Rogue One. You've got Stellan Skarsgård playing Luthen, who's like this, he essentially works in like a rare antiquities style shop, but he's like a massive part of the Rebel Alliance and a bit of a dealer and a trader who's trying to kind of bring it down from the inside. And then you've got and that plays excellently by Stellan Skarsgård, I must say. And then Genevieve O'Reilly, who's playing Mon Mothma, who is a character who's kind of popped up in lots of different Star Wars media up to this point, and she's like part of the elite in the Senate, and she's also trying with funding to bring down the Empire from the inside. And they're like the three main like pivot points of the show, and just seeing it from their different perspectives. Obviously Andor as a main character, spend most time with him, but it just gradually unfolds and you get a real good picture of who these characters are over time, and it's written so well. And then the last three episodes kind of Cassian returning to his home planet to rescue his girlfriend who's been pinched away by the Empire while they're trying to use her as bait to bring him back. And his mother passed away, so her funeral is there, and it's just attended by like hundreds of these Imperial troopers and everything. They're trying to like spot Cassian coming back into the planet, and the brilliant climactic episode like builds tension and drama so well. One of those things where it's like lots of side streets and alleys and crawl spaces and that for Cassian to get to the point that he needs to get to, and then ends on a bit of a cliffhanger as well, which is good, like definitely setting up for further series. But I honestly could talk just about how well executed this show is. Like going through it, I won't go through it episode by episode because no one's got that time, but it's just so the story, the way it's told, and the art style and direction and everything of this show are just completely perfect for what it needs to be. There's and as well, if you're not the sort of person who likes the whole magical mythical force element and like the main characters of Star Wars a lot of the time having these abilities and powers, probably feels a little bit, to use a video game term, OP, right? If you've got somebody who could take a laser sword and cut down hundreds of people in their way to fight their big climactic battle, then there's less jeopardy. Whereas Cassian is just a guy who has a blaster, who happens to be a little bit tougher than maybe he looks, who's just put in some really, really difficult situations and managed just to kind of foist his way through it really, really well. But it's a very good show, Mark. I really recommend it to anyone out there who is on the fence as to whether they want to watch it or not. And even if you don't give a shit about Star Wars, a lot of this doesn't really matter, because they really make the Empire feel like an oppressive fascist regime in this, even more so than I've seen in any Star Wars media previously. Every inch of people's actions and their day-to-day routines and everything feels scrutinized and overseen by the Empire in such an intrusive, gross, hideous fascist fashion that you just, even if you don't really understand what the Empire means in the grand scheme of Star Wars, you can look at this and go, okay, yeah, these are the bad guys, these are the space Nazis who we clearly need to knock off their fucking perch. And there's two incredible resistance style speeches in this, one from Cassian's mother in the last episode, and one in particular from Andy Serkis, his character, as like a rallying cry in the Prison Break episode, which just it's the sort of thing that you want to kind of play, and then you feel like you could start revolutions based on these speeches. Like, they're so great.
That on Michael Sheen's promo to the Welsh football team.
Better. Yeah? Andy Serkis is, honest to God, Andy Serkis's promo that he cuts in that episode, going from like somebody who's like completely broken down, managing shifts in a prison that he's probably never going to escape from. His character Kino Loy, breaks into the main control room of this prison and is just shouting repeatedly like the phrase, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but he just works his way up to it in a speech, and then it just becomes this like rallying cry, and everyone in the prison is like chanting it, trying to get out. It's just executed so well, so good. And yeah, I don't want to give too many details about the show away, but I can't say enough good things about it. I really didn't think, upon watching those first few episodes, and especially with the Marvel show Burnout, I didn't think I was going to enjoy this show anywhere near as much as I have. But it's the first Disney Plus show for a while that's felt like, I need to see this like the day it comes out, absolutely. And we'll then go on YouTube afterwards and watch whoever breaking down every episode just to pick up any details that I might have missed and stuff. And I've just got really excited when I was watching it, and it's a massive thumbs up from me.
One question I'll have for you, because you mentioned there about the MCU burnout, and the turnaround of MCU shows it's like 2-1, I think, with the Star Wars TV shows at this point. But I would say I feel like the reception to the Star Wars TV shows has been stronger overall than MCU. I don't know whether it's...
Yeah, they've been better. The reality is they've been better. Mandalorian is incredible, like really good. The Boba Fett show was a bit up and down. It had its good parts, it had its bad parts. I really liked watching the Obi-Wan show because it kind of made me feel a little bit like a kid again, watching some of the bits and pieces. And I think Ewan McGregor is an absolute credit to that character, to have somebody like not only probably draw level in terms of their performance with Alec Guinness, but like add even more depth and feeling in some of his scenes to who this guy is, to make you kind of emotionally attached to him. Whether or not the way the show was written, or if it felt rushed or a bit silly in places, it is totally fair. But for me, it was a really nice addition into the canon. And then to follow it up with this show, just wow. So yeah, I would say there's a kind of a mixture of quality, but there's no She-Hulks in there, there's no Falcon and Winter Soldiers where, the quality just really wasn't on the same par as some of the other things, the highs are very high, but the lows aren't really that low at all with the Star Wars shows.
Why do you think that is though? Is it like just overall the writing? I mean, so one of the things obviously is Star Wars isn't as beholden to trying to tie against it's either tying against like lore that's already happened, or it's just not relevant to I think for the most part most of it is just tied to lore that's already happened, where the MCU is trying to kind of stay on top of everything that's trying to connect with the films. Do you think that's like one of the big things that's causing the headaches with the MCU, the TV shows?
I don't want to speculate on it, really. I just want to talk about how fucking good Andor is. I think I'll talk about it next week, because I think a couple more of the guys will have seen it by then. But the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special is out there now, so that's something that can put a smile on your face from an MCU perspective, I would say. And I just think they've been telling better stories. That's it. Better written, better directed, better stories for the most part. Loki was fucking fantastic. Really liked the start of WandaVision, even if it maybe didn't end as strong. They're kind of on par with some of that stuff, but rest of it, maybe not that good. Whereas Star Wars, overall the average quality has just been that much better. So there you go. It's just one of those things, I think, really. But yeah, the longer they keep making the content for Star Wars on Disney Plus, the longer I'm going to consume it, and I hope the quality doesn't drop too much.
All right, yeah, I'm so behind on that kind of stuff. I don't know if I will get to Andor, but like,
You should though. Honest, this is a plea to watch it. It's so
because
fucking good.
the thing is, I did like Rogue Legacy. Was it Rogue Legacy? No, it was Rogue One. Sorry, Rogue Legacy.
Rogue One.
Game. Yeah. I did like Rogue One. I thought that was one of the stronger Star Wars films that came out around that time. I'd say I probably preferred it to any of the three of the most recent, this most recent trilogy. I would say arguably. So yeah, I should have a look at it. Is it one of the things that you can just jump into it? Maybe you haven't seen Rogue One, but otherwise you should be good to go.
You don't even need to have seen Rogue One. That's what I mean. You could come into this show, never seen a Star Wars project before. If you like, sci-fi and just well-written TV drama, you'll get on board with this show very quickly.